Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, before tonight's conversation, I decided to open a bottle of wine. So I first tried putting the corkscrew in the bottom of the bottle, and that didn't work. So I just broke off the top, but
Oh,
then
did you subrage? Did you use the
no, I just smashed
no,
it
just
on,
smashed on a counter
no, I
edge?
smashed it on the television.
Oh,
And
all right.
so I didn't do any of those
Well, except open the bottle of wine.
except open the bottle of wine, uh, which I did in the right way because it was the right thing to do and the right way. And that's what we're going to talk about is doing the right thing in the wrong way is like doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
And that there's a lot to that. And I think that's something I would like us to talk about.
Okay. Well, since you opened a bottle of wine, I know what you're drinking this evening.
Yes.
So what sort of wine is it?
This is from a winery in Napa called V Satui. It's their
Gesundheit.
2022 Family Red. It's a blend of several different varietals and is just a lovely, fruity but robust, great, easy drinking but substantial wine. It's a wonderful one of our
So would you
favorites.
would you classify it as something of a dessert wine or is it
Oh
a
no, it's not sweet, but it's got
oh,
definitely got fruit, but there's some tannins in it and there's Cabernet in it, but it's blended with some Merlot and I'm trying to remember what the other varietals in it are. So not a dessert wine, but I could sip this by itself, but had this with dinner and it's
yeah,
lovely.
very good.
Yeah. And I used a corkscrew and actually opened the cork the correct way. So what are you
So
drinking this
so
evening?
conventional.
Yeah.
So I've got some Duke and Dame salted caramel whiskey
Oh,
on the rocks.
okay. What type of whiskey is that? Is that a
It doesn't specify, but I presume it is from its flavor. I'm guessing it's a rye or Canadian type blend
okay.
with a caramel flavoring. So,
I've been making old fashions more often with rye
hmm.
and with a rich demerara simple syrup. Um,
How is that different from your?
it's everything is more so the I use less of the rich syrup. It's a 2-to-1 sugar to
Okay.
water,
Hmm.
and it's because the demerara it's richer in flavor, sweeter, but I use less. The rye is spicier,
Right.
um, and then I use orange bitters and chocolate bitters as well, and it makes a it's an old fashioned, but it's much more everything's more pronounced. It's elevated,
Yeah,
accentuated rather. So I'll make you one next time we
that'd be
get
great.
together.
I
So
would very much enjoy that, I think.
yeah,
So,
cool. Yeah,
cheers.
that is really nice. Um, hmm. um, so I was thinking about this in terms of in terms of current events,
Uh-huh.
and specifically, oh, let's say that they're not hypothetically speaking, but there's a despotic, totalitarian country that who treats its people badly and is a danger to all the countries around it. And its people are protest and it kills lots of its own people and is a really really bad country. So a good thing would be, a good outcome would be if that country changed, if it would no longer oppress its people, if it was no longer a danger to countries around it and the world, that'd be a good thing. But if you do go about trying to change that the wrong way, you can end up potentially with a worse result than you've currently got.
Okay. Yes.
So it got me thinking, and the schools of thought uh, are are often called consequentialism or deontology.
Right.
Consequentialism meaning that the focus is on the outcome of the action. If the outcome is good, it doesn't matter how you got there.
It's
It's the
the ends
consequence.
always justify the means.
Right. Which is often um, it's often said that Machiavelli wrote that. He didn't. It's a loose paraphrasing of something
Yes.
he did say, but he didn't actually say that.
Well, but his ends are different.
Yeah,
His ends are not necessarily good. They are simply about, and I think I've said this before. I think Machiavelli gets something of a bad rap.
yeah,
But his motive, his entire premise in The Prince is usually what's being quoted here, is about maintaining power and sovereignty of a nation.
yes,
Not just the power of the person, you know, at the head of this nation, but the sovereignty of the nation itself
yes,
is part of his motivation in writing this treatise. So,
right. And so it's the mistake extending that to personal behavior because that's not the context he's right. Yes, I agree. And most people don't read. And some of the people that do read only read what other people have written about something instead of reading it for themselves.
yeah, and even more people don't comprehend it after they read it anyway.
Yeah, yep. I just saw a really interesting thing about um it was comparing essentially the Oxford style of education scholarship to others and said you read and you read critically. And what that means is you read something and then you go back through and you read it again and you make note of things and you go back and you read it again, you make note of other things and then you look up the things you made note of and then you annotate it and really deeply dissect it, and it's a way of learning to think in a deeper and more nuanced way.
Hmm.
People don't do. I had trouble getting students to read anything.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
if somebody said if professors actually could influence students, they'd influence them to read the syllabus, right? Um, so consequentialism and that contrasting with deontology, where the action itself is what's the focus, not the consequences. And the problem is that that can stifle, that can lead to people being so concerned with the process that they never get to a result. And I've seen
Right.
that. And I just saw a video of it was a organizational meeting with people constantly objecting and bringing up the rules and doing it was they never came to any outcome
Right.
because they were so focused on that. Um,
Well, we're gonna have a meeting about what the meeting's about.
yes, about no, about when to schedule the meeting, about what the meeting will be about.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Um,
And who should be in the meeting?
yes.
And yeah.
I had one rule of one firm meeting rule in business I had was we don't, nobody leaves the meeting until everybody knows what the next steps are and what everybody's responsibilities are. And I use something called a RASI or RASI chart.
Hmm.
For each action, each next step, who's responsible, who has to approve it, who has to support it, and who has to be informed about it. And that lets you know if everything's covered, and then you can put dates on it, and then it can actually be managed. But there have been too many meetings where I'd been to where everybody left the meeting and, oh, well, it's the group will do it. Well, no, if the group's doing it, nobody's doing it. Somebody
Right.
has to be responsible for it. And you get together for the next meeting and nothing would be done because nobody knew what was supposed to be done. So,
Well,
um,
and another version of that is the so-called stand-up meeting,
oh,
where
yeah,
the object is to just keep the meeting short. So you don't let anybody sit down. Everybody has to
right.
stand up during the meeting. So that keeps the meeting short. You've accomplished that, but you if that's the goal, not actually having a productive meeting, just having a
Right.
short meeting.
Right. Yep. Um, my example at the beginning, opening the bottle of wine was the goal, but you do it the wrong way. You not only spill the wine, damage the wine, lose the wine, break other things.
Right.
It's ineffective. So I, I, I was, when I was thinking about this, I thinking, well, this could be a short discussion. You have to consider both what you want to accomplish and how you're doing it. There we
Right.
go.
Well, but I think there's also a factor, a component of this, because there's what you end up with, right, is it can be judged whether you if you set a goal, you can judge whether you met the goal or not, whether you
Hmm.
accomplished the thing you set out to do. If you if all you did was destroy everything except the thing you wanted to do, that was the wrong thing to do.
Right.
All right. So then that's the point you're making. But there is a another component I think that should be some factor in here, and that is motive and intent.
Hmm.
You can have, and you can do everything right, get a poor result, right? Or get a, or you can do you can also do the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Yes.
So motive becomes, and intent becomes a factor in judging the outcome.
Yes. And so if you do the wrong thing, if you're your goal is wrong and you're going about it the wrong way, you're just terrible.
Right. You're right.
If your goal is correct, but you go about it the wrong way, you can have really negative consequences and often not accomplish it.
Right.
You can do go after accomplishing the wrong things in the right way, and so you're just getting better at accomplishing the wrong things. And I saw that in business and marketing all the time. That clients were want they didn't understand what the problem was. So they'd ask for a solution to that they thought was going to solve their problem. And not only would the solution they were asking for not solve their problem, the problem they thought they had wasn't the problem they actually had. So
Right.
if you implement it, and I had arguments, not just merely discussions, arguments with account people all the time. Said if we do just what the client's asking for, instead of telling them what they actually need,
Right.
it's not going to work and they're going to blame us. So what we have to do is say, this is what you've asked for, but here's why this won't work. And here's
Yep.
why what your real problem is this, and what you really need is this, and this we can do. And that's why we're not just
Right.
executing your ideas. We're not short order cooks. We're partners in your business. We're going to help you achieve this. The best is doing the right thing the right way. And Stephen Covey, his Seven Habits of Successful People, is where I first encountered this difference between efficiency and effectiveness. And what you were
Yes.
describing is people talk about efficiency. Yes, we full steam ahead and accomplished the goal and left disaster in our wake.
Right. Well,
As
or
the
you burn out all your people, or
right.
yeah.
And so
No
we're
one's satisfied with the job they're doing.
right. Or I've seen clients say, "Great result. I'll never work with you again because it was so awful." Or they usually just ghost you and don't reappear.
Right.
And I've seen clients say, "Okay, there were a few hiccups, but next time we do this, we'll do fix those because the process was so good."
Hmm.
Um, and I remember there was one agency I worked at. Um, Account executive came to me to work on a project. They said, "Well, that account is usually handled by this other art director." And he said, "Yeah, but if I go to them, I have to spend 20 minutes listening to them complain about how awful and unfair everything is. And they're so busy and they don't have time and blah, 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 blah. And after 20 minutes, we can finally get to business. Um, with you, you just say, 'How can I help you?' And we talk about it. And either you do it or you find somebody to do it or you find a way to get it done. And it's, you're easier to work with."
Hmm.
Yeah. And that's important. Um, and so it's the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, which is what I think you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is. I have customers, clients who, well, and I've also said this before that um, 50% of salesmanship is confidence in your expertise.
Mm,
Like you've come to me because I know what I'm talking about. Like you're a plumber and you come to me to brand your company.
hmm.
If I called you and said, "Come and fix my sink," I'm not going to tell you what gauge pipe to use. I'm not going to
Yep.
stand over your shoulder and tell you how to use a plunger. I'm going to leave and let you do your work, and then I expecting you to bill me, you know, responsibly.
Yep.
That's the relationship we have to have here. I'm going to do the very best work I can for you. You got to trust me that that's what's going to happen. If all you want to do is direct my pen, so to speak, then we can do that. But that's going to end up costing you more
Yeah.
in the
Because
long
and
run.
it won't get the results you need.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's so many examples of um, and I learned as a student, focus on the process, not the product. And if you focus on the process and you have a good process, the product will result. And I told as a teacher, told students, my own students, I said, one of the things you're trying to learn here is process. And you're trying to learn a process to start, and then you'll make it into your process because when you get up every day and you go to work, you work your process. You don't sit around waiting for inspiration. A
Right.
prof Amateurs wait for inspiration, professionals get to work. And so you work the process. And so your process better be good. And if you throw out the process and just make shit up as you go along, you're going to break things and
Right.
not necessarily in a good way. It takes real expertise to change your process, to revise your process, to make things up. There's uh, I've taught when I was teaching design, I taught layout,
Hmm.
and I would teach them grid layouts and different kinds of grid layouts, which is a kind of standard way of, and just simplifying. You have a page, people know their margins and columns and borders, and there's a whole bunch of terminology for those
Yeah.
things. That's a grid. And if you put things within that and line them up, it creates an more organized page than just if you randomly drop shit in the page. It looks like a high school pep squad's booster
Yeah, flyer.
poster stuff where stuff randomly glued every which way. Um, but there's a textbook I use called Making and Breaking the Grid, really useful textbook.
Hmm.
And they have lots of examples. They describe different grid structures and how to set them up and examples and how they're used. But then there's a whole section in essentially organic, non-geometric, non-linear, free-form kind of grids. And it's
Right.
fascinating because even in these things that might look to the casual observer to be random, there's a structure to them. And
Oh, sure.
the structure, so it's very difficult, takes a high level of skill to be able to eyeball the placement of things.
But even that can be, I know what you're talking about, and even
Yeah,
that can be trained because there are
yes,
principles at work
exactly.
no matter what.
Dynamic asymmetry and the balance and I taught
The path
elements
your
and
eye naturally
principles of
takes,
design. Yeah,
all that stuff.
exactly. Exactly. And
So
so,
those things have to be learned first
yes,
before
exactly
you
my
can.
point. Exactly my point. Exactly my point. And I think one of the problems is that I see with people doing well, it's questionable whether they're trying to do the right thing. I think a lot of times they're trying to do the wrong thing and they go about it in the wrong way. So there's a combination of arrogance and incompetence that,
Hubris.
yeah, it's hubris. It's funny. I was talking to um, I've talked to a lot of um, students um, over the years, not just ones I've taught, but ones I talked to in researching and writing. Um, and they talked about their application essays for college. And in the past 20 years, it seems to be why I want to go to this college seems to be their application essay. It's like,
Hmm.
really? That's your application essay? Why you want? And so, oh, what was your application essay? My application essay was comparing classical examples of hubris to American foreign policy.
You didn't start out as a design student though.
No, I did not. No, no. Um,
I didn't have an application essay. I had two application interviews,
oh,
but
yeah. I still have a copy of that somewhere. I hesitate to read it again. Man, it was yeah.
so I want to go back to the list you made up. We
Yeah.
talked about consequentialism and Machiavellianism very briefly, but one of the things you listed was utilitarianism,
Oh yeah.
and I think that that's an important thing that we should talk about. A related theory you have here, focusing on achieving the greatest good for the greatest number.
Hmm.
And from a political standpoint, that has all in my lifetime, all of my growing up, that was the assumed goal of government.
Hmm.
The greatest good for the greatest number. So, and I think that that's a reasonable goal
Yeah.
in any kind of policy decision.
I think the one, yes, I agree with one caveat that the greatest good for the greatest number of people cannot be cannot, as a consequence, sacrifice the good for other for some people.
Oh, well,
Sacrifice, they can't be sacrificial to the greatest good. So, for example, if you believed, as let's say an ancient culture believed that harvest and rain and good weather for the most people was the goal, and so they would try to achieve that, and the way they achieved that was human sacrifice.
right.
I'm making a really
Yeah.
extreme example, right?
Hmm.
Um, so that's the one caveat to utilitarianism is the representation of minorities in a way. So it could utilitarianism's pitfall can be um, majoritarian authoritarianism.
Well, yeah, I was about to mention that
Okay, sorry.
it doesn't want to become the a tyranny of the majority,
Right,
right? Because the greatest good isn't necessarily what the most people want,
right.
which is what pure democracy would demand.
Hmm.
So the most people want this, which if the most people want these minorities to be oppressed, that is not a Republican democracy.
Right,
Part of
right.
what that democracy does is protect all the citizens to a relative standard,
Yes.
right? And that's what it's supposed to do. Um, so, and this is whenever this argument comes up from someone who says we're not a democracy, we're a Republican, we're a representative republic. Yeah, and you know what that means, right? That
It's a it's a form of democracy. A
it's a form of democracy
Yeah,
that protects the minority from the
yeah,
majority.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but so there that utilitarianism, right? And as I was saying, growing up, the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party was, from my young perspective, nearly indistinguishable. I came to learn as I grew up and got a little more involved and read the papers and so on when we still had papers that came to your house every day. Um, you realize that, okay, the goal here is the most good for the most people. These people think this is how you go about that, and these people think there's a different way to go about that. But the goal was always the same. And
The,
now it's,
the professed goal was the same.
well, the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
The professed goal was that, whether or
Yeah,
not it
okay.
was the actual goal.
And that seemed to bear out in the process, as we were talking about earlier, of legislation.
Hmm.
That, okay, one side thinks this way is the best and the other side thinks this way is the best, and they compromise
Right.
with while agreeing that the greatest number will get the most good by this compromise.
Hmm.
That's no longer the case.
Right.
We find now that is it doesn't matter. You people need to be punished, therefore we're going to do it this way.
Yeah, the Speaker of the House, now I think imprisoned, Hastert, um, came up with something became known as the Hastert rule. He would only bring a bill to the floor of the House if he could pass it only with Republican votes.
Mm-hmm.
So he was com absolutely did not want any compromise or any, if Democrats wanted to vote for it too, okay, but he wanted to be able to pass it without them. So he
Right.
didn't involve them. So it broke. There were several others involved in that era of breaking the idea of compromise. When you demonize the other side, it's it's really difficult to compromise because you've been, as a politician, campaigning on demonizing the other side, and then you sit down and compromise with them. now you can't go
Now
back.
you're a traitor.
Now, yeah. How could you do that?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, um,
So that
yeah,
utilitarianism is
yeah,
related to consequentialism in a sort of positive way.
yeah,
That the you can have a goal, and if we're talking about personal goals of I want to move into a house by the end of next year, you know, if that means I have to knock over a bank to make my down payment, okay, that's the wrong way to achieve your goal.
yeah, and can have in the wrong way can often have negative consequences.
Yes. So,
So can the wrong goal,
right, well,
right?
maybe the goal was just to knock over the bank.
Yeah, yeah.
So how could you go about that the right way? Well, the right way is to do it without getting caught.
Well, the right way to knock over a bank is to we see that all the time now. We see that all the time. Um, it's yeah, um, yeah,
So from the standpoint of the virtues,
yes.
how are we how are we addressing these three, four different things?
I was thinking about this, and here's what I came up with. The virtues, as we've often said, do not each exist in isolation from the others. Courage requires honesty, which also requires courage, which requires fortitude. Developing prowess requires courage and honesty and fortitude and
And humility.
humility. And so and oh, if only there were a word for putting all the virtues together. Oh, there is, sprezzatura. Um, they don't exist in isolation. And so I think while philosophers pull apart ideas to better understand them, I think what we need to do is integrate different ideas into a whole that actually works. And that's really the kind of philosophy that we talk about all the time, that it doesn't exist in isolation. So, yeah, you can be efficient and break things, or you can do things the right way but never get them done, never accomplish your goals. Well, if you're doing it the right way, you probably will. But if you're focused only on on the process, maybe you won't advance towards the goal. You have to think of all of those things together. You have to temper your focus on process with timeliness to get things done. You have to, it's like there was a book about management that took lessons from the Marine Corps.
Oh, I
And
thought you were going to I thought you were going to go to the Genghis Khan one.
no, no, it's from the Marine Corps. And it
Uh-huh.
was about having a solution that's 70% correct that you implement now and fix on the fly while you're going
Hmm.
is more effective. So you have a process because they have a very robust process, situation, mission, execution, administration, logistics, and command. So the five-step framework for tackling things works really well. We've talked about things like that, the ODA loop, in terms of all sorts of things. A process, very
Right.
much process. I've talked to students about the similarities between the creative process and the scientific process. That you need to, I've encountered students. I keep coming back to situations with students because I've learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot from teaching them and from
Hmm.
them that don't try to compose a sentence perfectly in your head. before you write it down. Just start writing.
Mm.
And this is a conversation. I went to an AI summit s- series of sessions, and one of the things I really object, I was a real troublemaker that day, asking difficult questions. And one of the presenters said, "Well, it reduces cognitive load, and so it makes things easier." And I said, "That's exactly what we don't want to do,
Yeah. Right.
because cognitive load, the challenge of that, the challenge is how people learn. So I don't want something that will write for me or for someone else, because in the process of writing, you clarify your thinking, and thinking clarifies your writing, and it's iterative, and they depend on each other.
Right.
Um, and so I think the process of developing a solution, having a process, trying to implement it towards a solution, you're making corrections along the way. So it's not, here's the process, I'll do it, it's linear, it goes straight to the end. No, it's a lot more like the kid in the old newspaper cartoon, The Family Circus, when the mother calls in little, I forget what the Bobby or whatever the kid's name was,
Right.
and you see the path, and it's over the rocks and up the tree and down the tree and up the slide and down the slide and through the swings. What took you so long? You were right outside. Well, I came right in. No, it was, well, that's really the process. It's, it's not linear, and it's not supposed to be necessarily. Um, there's, a linear process would be convergent. Divergent is where there's many paths you explore, and then you
Right. You eliminate
you
some, you
eliminate
refine
and you
others.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I think there's a that's an I read a similar article about the the challenge is what improves the student. That
Yes,
if you eliminate all the challenges, they're not learning anything. They're just
exactly.
copying a
Exact
process. And
exactly.
and I've thought in recent years with the advent of AI, and I see it professionally, and I got to think it's happening academically. But the student now is no longer faced with the challenge of a blank page.
Yeah. Yeah.
You give them the assignment, and they can just type the assignment into an AI, and it'll spit out something. Now they may have to, you know, refine that tweet if they're wise. They'll refine it, you know,
Yeah.
research what it's
Yeah.
spitting out and look it over. But the blank page, just, you know, back, you and I remember putting a piece of paper in a typewriter, getting your margins set up, and then now what?
And actually I started on with I would do it pen and paper. I would,
Well, and that's
and then I'd had lots of pieces of paper, and I'd cut them and I'd rearrange them, and I'd get them in an order, and then I'd start typing it, and I'd be editing while I'm typing.
well, sure.
But it was, so there was a process just to get to the typewritten page.
And I would usually have an outline, right?
Right.
You start with the outline, and then you I would edit in my head as I sentence by sentence to bring the flesh out the outline
Yeah.
on the
Well,
page.
I outlined both my books before writing
Yeah,
them, but the outline changed in the process of writing them.
sure,
The
sure.
because it's going to do that. Um, the example you say of, oh, just, put a prompt into an AI, and then you can th they were referring to that as using it as a brainstorming tool. Said, well,
Uh-huh.
that's not what brainstorming is. That
Right.
means you don't know what brainstorming actually is, or was, or that it was created by Alex Osborne in an advertising agency, and how he did that. and why and what the process of it is, that means you're using the term without understanding it. Um, yeah, that's another episode we can talk about. That was an interesting day, uh, sessions about AI. Well, we've talked about AI before, but
We have,
yeah,
but we can continue to talk about that because it's going to continue to be a problem.
yes. I did um, use, I did and did this to learn about it, use an AI to analyze data for a paper I'm writing.
Right.
And it was frustrating.
Hmm.
And um, and I can talk more about that at some other time. I don't know that I'll be using it again. Uh, so
There's one more aspect I think we could talk about, and aiming these things, the right thing in the wrong way, the wrong thing in the right way. There's a I have heard people say, well, let me take a step back. In terms of personal interaction,
mhm.
where it's not just a goal or a thing that you have to accomplish, you're having a conversation or a debate with one or more people. And I have heard it put forward that it doesn't matter, it matters less what you said than how somebody felt about it.
Oh, yeah,
And I think that I go back to intent has to be considered
yeah,
in that instance. That if you hurt somebody's feelings, that's up to the person who has the feelings in some way. If you're not, if you are staying on point, if you are following a you know a following a path, a logical path in your discussion, in your argument, or whatever, and you say something that somebody else is offended by, you can't be distracted necessarily by the offense as long as what you're saying, if you didn't intend offense to make your
yeah.
point.
I've heard it said that um, simply being offended isn't the defense you think it is. It's okay, you're offended by what I said. I didn't intend to offend you. You chose to be offended. That's on you.
Right.
That's
That's Christopher Hitchens, I think.
yes, I think you're right. Um, um, years ago, um, the kind of brainstorming session, I guess, I or something similar. It wasn't a really organized brainstorming session. As I don't have a real clear memory of it. The one thing I do remember is that somebody suggested something. I said, "Ah, stupid idea," because so and so, and I gave reasons for it. And the person said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything after you called me stupid." I
Right.
said, "I'm sorry, I didn't call you stupid. I called your idea stupid." But I won't do that again. I apologize. And I learned from that. So I focus on, I don't use words like that. I use effective or ineffective. And I don't use pejorative words like stupid or not stupid. And certainly focus on the work and not the personality. But that was a lesson for me.
Sure.
Um, because it is often how you present it, how you say it is is as it well, Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message. How the message is
Sure.
presented is the message often.
It's important, but I think that you can't you can't dismiss the substance of the message just because you don't like how it's presented.
People do that all the time. I don't think they
Uh,
should. I agree
well,
with you.
that's I guess that's my
I
what
agree
I'm
with you.
getting at.
But people do that all the time.
Right. And you are certainly a more effective communicator if you can circumnavigate that.
And it's one of the things that I'm boggles my fucking mind about so many politicians who are constantly speaking to the public and doing so very badly.
Well,
They
yeah.
don't uh they speak in aphorisms, they don't articulate their ideas well, they don't there it just amazes me how
Well,
that's a part of your tool set.
well, I guess it depends on, how the tool has to be applied to the right machine. I mean,
Yeah,
if these politicians of in the last, I don't know, 40 years, 45 years have been, you don't have to be articulate if all you're trying to do is tweak an emotion
right.
instead of appeal to
Yeah.
an intellect.
Well, yes. And that again is the emotional appeal rather than the intellectual appeal is related to this right thing, wrong way, wrong thing,
Mhm.
right way, consequentialism,
Yes.
deontology. It's all related. If your goal as a politician is simply to stay in office and all the benefits that you can accrue from that, like
Hmm.
influence, money, and so on, then you don't care what the means you use are. And if the means are manipulating the emotions of people, you'll do that. And if the means are gerrymandering, so you're choosing your voters instead of your voting voters choosing you, you'll do that. And if your goal is to stay in power, and you can do that by taking money from lobbyists and voting for their cause so you can advertise more so you can stay in office, you'll do that. That's a perfect example of what I would call unethical consequentialism.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Unethical is the word I was looking for there.
Yes. Well, and that's why, and I come back to what I described as my philosophy of ethical pragmatism. What is ethics being the rules by which we exist as a society collaboratively, and pragmatism, what works, but you have to combine those in a way that is ethical.
Right.
It's you can't a- achieving a pragmatic and unethically no, and being unethical but in a way that's ineffective no. So it's got to be a balance. It's got to be a blend. It's got to mix. You have to do both of those things. And if it was easy, then anyone can
If it
do it.
was easy, we wouldn't need to elect anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
we didn't solve anything, but we've articulated some things.
We have. Um, well, the one thing I can say I did accomplish was successfully opening a wine bottle without causing damage.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Yeah, I intend to.
Well, it's not the first time you've done it. I can
That's true.
attest.
An experience, some experience, practice. I'll keep practicing until I get it right.
Well, that's exactly right. You
Yeah,
practice, practice, practice. You
yeah,
just
yeah,
some things you can never get too good at.
yeah. And that's how you get to Carnegie Hall, right?
That's right.
I actually many years ago, I was in New York City, and a stranger, came up to me and asked me how to get to Carnegie Hall.
No way.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely happened. Absolutely happened. And you know what I said.
I know what you said. I know what you said.
And and they didn't get the joke.
Oh, well,
But
That's what makes it funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah,
That's what makes the story funny.
yeah, that's what makes the story funny. So, okay, well, thank you very much for um for being here. Please like and subscribe and share and comment and tell us what
Yeah.
you'd like to have us discuss with us, pressing issues of the day and time or of any time.
Or even inconsequential fluff.
Yes. Yep.
We engage in it all the time. We'd be happy to engage in yours too.
Yes.
So,
So until we see you next time, be thou
a good night.
and true.